Tonight, we turn our attention to a figure whose life was a remarkable bridge between distant worlds, a singular individual whose journeys expanded the known horizons of medieval Europe in ways previously unimaginable. He was a curious spirit, driven by an innate desire to understand, a keen observer who absorbed the intricate details of foreign lands, and an intrepid traveller who ventured further east than almost any European before him, bringing back tales of wonders, vast empires, and cultures so rich and complex they reshaped the very fabric of Western thought. His story is one of unwavering curiosity, profound resilience in the face of immense challenges, and the enduring, transformative impact of exploration, forever altering the maps and the minds of his time. This is the story of Marco Polo. The city of Venice, in the mid-13th century, was a marvel of the medieval world, a unique and prosperous maritime republic unlike any other. Built upon a labyrinth of countless islands, interconnected by a shimmering network of canals and elegant bridges, it was a living testament to human ingenuity and ambition, rising almost magically from the Adriatic Sea. Its very foundations were rooted in trade, its wealth flowing endlessly from its strategic position as a primary hub, a vital gateway between the bustling, familiar markets of Christian Europe and the mysterious, often fabled, distant lands of the East. Its waterways teemed with the graceful glide of gondolas laden with local goods and the purposeful movement of larger merchant ships. In approximately 1254 AD, Venice was a city of intricate waterways and thriving markets, filled with the haggling of merchants, the calls of street vendors, and the constant ebb and flow of international commerce. It was in this dynamic environment that Marco Polo was born into a prominent and wealthy merchant family. The Polo family was already deeply entrenched in the immensely lucrative and often perilous business of Eastern trade, their name synonymous with distant ventures and exotic goods. Marco's early life was profoundly shaped by an unusual and formative family dynamic, one that instilled in him a premature sense of the world's boundless possibilities. His father, Niccolo, and his uncle, Maffeo, were seasoned adventurers, bold in their calculations and courageous in their pursuits, already deeply experienced in the perilous and immensely profitable business of long-distance trade with the East, having established contacts and routes that few Europeans dared to traverse. Indeed, for much of Marco's formative childhood, from his earliest memories, his father and uncle were conspicuously absent. They had embarked on their first epic journey that would take them far beyond the familiar confines of the Mediterranean, across vast, desolate deserts and towering snow-capped mountains, all the way to the distant and legendary court of the mighty Mongol emperor Kublai Khan. Tragically, during their long absence, Marco's mother passed away. While history doesn't record her name, the loss was a defining moment for the young boy, who was left without a parent and raised by his extended family. This unique upbringing took place in a city that thrived on global commerce, where every ship that docked brought a piece of the outside world. This environment instilled in him an early awareness of the world's great size, its diverse cultures, and the incredible opportunities that lay beyond the horizon. The return of Niccolo and Maffeo in 1269 AD, after a full 16 years since their initial departure, was a truly momentous event for the young Marco, who was then around 15 years old. It was the first time he had ever met his father. Their reappearance was like something out of a legend, a reunion filled with a mix of awe and unfamiliarity. They arrived back in Venice laden with incredible riches from their ventures, bags of precious jewels and silks, and also with astonishing, almost fantastical tales of the huge and powerful Mongol Empire, of its formidable ruler Kublai Khan, and most importantly, with a unique diplomatic mission directly from the Khan himself. Kublai, a ruler of immense curiosity and foresight, intrigued by the West, had requested that the Polo brothers return to him with 100 learned men to teach Christianity and Western sciences, and with holy oil from Jerusalem, a symbol of spiritual significance that held great meaning for the Khan. These stories, whispered in the bustling candlelit Venetian household, filled with exotic artifacts and the lingering scent of distant lands, would have ignited an unquenchable spark of curiosity and adventure in the impressionable young Marco, painting vivid pictures of a world far grander, more diverse, and more technologically advanced than he could have ever conceived. The tales of the Khan's unimaginable wealth, his numerous and disciplined armies, and the wonders of Cathay, the Chinese lands under Mongol rule, would have lingered in his mind, shaping his burgeoning worldview and setting the stage for his own future. Marco's upbringing in this dynamic merchant household was a practical and invaluable education in itself, one that prepared him uniquely for his destiny, far removed from the formal, cloistered schooling of the time. He would have learned the fundamental principles of trade, the intricate art of accounting, and the meticulous importance of accurate record-keeping for complex international transactions. He likely gained a basic yet essential understanding of navigation, the practicalities of handling precious and often fragile cargo, and the complex web of commercial laws and customs that governed international trade in a bustling port city like Venice. He would also likely have developed a keen eye for assessing the quality and value of goods, an acute ear for discerning different dialects and accents, and a patient understanding of negotiation and cultural nuances, skills that would prove absolutely invaluable on his future travels, allowing him to adapt and thrive in unfamiliar environments. The engine of this global commerce was the legendary network of trade routes known as the Silk Road. Contrary to its name, it was not a single paved road. It was a vast, intricate network of interconnected trade routes spanning thousands of miles across the entire breadth of Asia. These routes would have been a familiar and central idea in his family's discourse, representing both immense opportunity for wealth and formidable challenges of endurance, risk, and cultural understanding. It was this unique blend of a prosperous, outward-looking city, a family deeply involved in distant ventures, and the tantalizing, almost mythical stories of his elders that prepared Marco, perhaps unknowingly, for the extraordinary and unprecedented journey that lay ahead, a journey that would forever link his name with the grand exploration of the East and redefine the boundaries of the known world for generations to come. The irresistible call to adventure, deeply fueled by the astonishing tales recounted by his father and uncle, and solidified by the unique opportunity of fulfilling the imperial invitation from the great Khan himself, finally saw Marco Polo embark on his own monumental journey in 1271. At the tender age of 17, a young man brimming with eagerness for experience and discovery, his mind already filled with visions of distant lands, he departed from the familiar canals of Venice with his father, Niccolo, and his uncle, Maffeo. Together, they set out on a path that would lead them across the vast, often perilous, expanse of the medieval world, towards the distant and legendary Mongol Empire, a realm of unimaginable wonders and untold riches. Their initial route took them across the shimmering blue waters of the Mediterranean Sea to the Levant, landing at a place called Acre, a bustling and strategically vital port city in the Holy Land, at the time a last bastion of the Crusader states. Here, amidst the clamour of different languages and the scent of the sea, they fulfilled a crucial part of Kublai Khan's unique request. They carefully collected holy oil from Jerusalem, a sacred relic for the Khan, and secured official letters from the Pope's representative. These items were essential diplomatic tools for their mission to the distant Mongol court, symbolizing a bridge between two wildly different worlds. From the familiar sunny shores of the Mediterranean, Their journey transformed into an arduous and relentless overland expedition, a true testament to human endurance and the sheer, daunting scale of medieval travel. They traversed the ancient lands of Persia, a region steeped in millennia of history and vibrant, diverse cultures, encountering bustling caravanserais, roadside inns for weary travellers and their animals, and ancient cities like Tabriz, a major trading hub renowned for its carpets and silks, and Hormuz, a key port on the Persian Gulf, where goods from India and beyond arrived, hinting at even more distant lands. Their path then wound through the rugged, often snow-capped mountains of Afghanistan, including the formidable Pamir Mountains, known for their dizzying heights, treacherous passes, and the thin, biting air that tested every breath and every step. Each arduous step took them further from the familiar landscapes and comforts of Europe, deeper into a world of stark, breathtaking beauty and increasingly challenging terrain, where every day brought new tests of their resolve and physical limits. The silence of these high passes, broken only by the wind and the crunch of their footsteps, would have been a profound contrast to the bustling cities they left behind. They endured the searing, relentless heat and endless shimmering horizons of far-reaching deserts, including the formidable Gobi Desert, where survival depended entirely on finding scarce oases, often marked by a few date palms and enduring harsh winds that sculpted the dunes into ever-changing patterns. The sheer emptiness of these stretches could be overwhelming, yet within them lay hidden pathways and ancient wells. They navigated through fertile river valleys, where life miraculously thrived amidst the arid expanses, offering precious respite, fresh water, and sustenance for their caravan. Then they ascended into towering mountain ranges, their peaks often shrouded in mist or crowned with perpetual snow, providing a stark and dramatic contrast to the flat plains below. These profound geographical transitions were not merely changes in scenery, but fundamental shifts in climate, available resources, and the very rhythm of life, demanding constant adaptation, ingenuity, and profound resilience from the travellers, forcing them to learn and adjust with every mile. Along this long and winding road, stretching across thousands of miles and countless weeks, the Polos encountered an array of different cultures, languages, and customs, a living tapestry of humanity. They met the hardy nomadic tribes on the vast steppes, whose lives revolved around their herds of horses and sheep and the open, boundless land. They encountered settled farmers in the fertile oases, tending their intricate irrigation systems and their precious crops, and they engaged with sophisticated merchants in the bustling cities, exchanging not only goods, but also knowledge and stories. Marco, with his keen observational skills and insatiable curiosity, would have absorbed the intricate details of their daily lives, their unique forms of worship, their diverse and often unfamiliar cuisines, from spiced stews to fermented milk, and their distinct social structures, noting the subtle differences in their governance and customs. He would have heard a multitude of languages, Persian, various Turkic dialects, perhaps even some early forms of Mongolian, and witnessed firsthand the vibrant, endless exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies that characterized the legendary Silk Road, a true artery of global connection. These interactions, far from being mere fleeting glimpses, provided him with an unparalleled, on-the-ground education in the astonishing diversity of humanity and the profound interconnectedness of the medieval world, shaping his understanding of global commerce and culture in ways no European before him had experienced, and indeed few would for centuries to come. Medieval travel was inherently dangerous, fraught with risks that could quickly turn a grand adventure into a desperate struggle for survival. The Polos faced the constant threat of illness, from unfamiliar diseases encountered in new climates to the sheer exhaustion and malnutrition of prolonged travel, as evidenced by Marco himself falling gravely ill and having to recuperate for an extended period in the mountains of northern Afghanistan, a testament to the physical toll. They had to contend with the ever-present danger of brigands and bandits who preyed on vulnerable caravans in remote mountain passes and desolate desert stretches, forcing constant vigilance and careful negotiation. Harsh and unpredictable weather conditions, from scorching desert heat that could dehydrate a man in hours to freezing mountain blizzards that could trap travellers for days, added to the great physical toll and the psychological strain. Yet despite these formidable hardships, the Polos pressed on, driven by a powerful combination of mercantile ambition, diplomatic duty to the Khan, and a profound, unyielding sense of curiosity about the world beyond their home. After approximately 3.5 years of relentless travel, traversing thousands upon thousands of miles across the heart of Asia, navigating both natural and human obstacles, they finally reached their destination, the opulent and awe-inspiring court of Kublai Khan, the undisputed and most powerful ruler of the mighty Mongol Empire. The long road east, a journey of unparalleled scale and discovery, had come to its first incredible conclusion, opening a new chapter in Marco Polo's life and setting the stage for his remarkable service. The arrival of the three Polos, Niccolo, Maffeo, and the young Marco, at the summer palace of Chengdu in 1275, must have been a moment of profound awe and unimaginable wonder, a stark contrast to the rugged landscapes they had just traversed. After years of arduous travel across towering mountains and stretching deserts, they found themselves in the very presence of Kublai Khan, the formidable grandson of Genghis Khan. The Mongol Empire stretched from Eastern Europe all the way to the distant shores of the Pacific Ocean, encompassing a staggering portion of the known world. His court was a dazzling hub of immense power, unimaginable wealth, and extraordinary cultural diversity, a world away from the familiar confines and more modest scale of medieval Europe. Kublai Khan, a shrewd and intellectually curious emperor, known for his administrative genius, his strategic vision, and his open-mindedness towards foreign knowledge, had previously met Niccolo and Maffeo and now welcomed the Polos warmly, eager to learn more about European customs, religions, and the latest scientific advancements. He saw in them not just merchants, but potential sources of valuable information and expertise, particularly from a part of the world largely unknown to him. Marco, still a young man of around 21 years, quickly distinguished himself at the Mongol court, proving to be far more than a merchant's son or a simple traveller. He possessed a remarkable aptitude for languages, a keen observational intellect, and an insatiable curiosity about the world around him, eager to absorb every detail. While it is debated whether he mastered Chinese, the language of the empire's Han population, he certainly became proficient in several of the lingua francas then used across East Asia. These included, most notably, Persian, various Turkic dialects, and likely some form of Mongolian, the language of the ruling Mongol elite. This impressive linguistic ability, combined with his sharp mind, his eagerness to learn, and his capacity for detailed and articulate reporting, allowed him to integrate deeply and effectively into the vast and complex Mongol administration. Kublai Khan, recognizing Marco's unique talents and his reliability, took a particular liking to him, finding him to be an intelligent and trustworthy envoy, a valuable asset in managing his diverse and far-flung empire. Marco was soon appointed to various administrative and diplomatic roles within the Mongol Empire, a testament to the Khan's trust and his own capabilities. He served as a trusted envoy for Kublai Khan, undertaking numerous missions that took him to distant parts of China and even to remote regions of Southeast Asia. These missions were not merely about delivering messages or collecting taxes. They were unparalleled opportunities for Marco to observe, meticulously document, and report back to the Khan on the diverse cultures, the natural resources, and the intricate governance of the empire's various regions. He became, in essence, the Khan's eyes and ears, gaining an unparalleled first-hand understanding of the inner workings of this grand and sophisticated civilization, far beyond what any other European had ever achieved. His detailed reports provided Kublai Khan with vital intelligence, helping him manage his sprawling and diverse territories, understand local conditions, and implement effective policies. The Mongol capital was Khanbalik, which is the modern-day city of Beijing. It was here that Marco Polo would spend the next 17 years of his life, a period of service and adventure that would fundamentally shape his worldview. The city itself was a revelation, a place of astonishing size, organization, and advanced infrastructure, far surpassing any European city of the era. Marco described its meticulously planned grid-like layout, its wide, busy avenues that accommodated large crowds and imperial processions, and its remarkably efficient infrastructure, a testament to the engineering of the Yuan dynasty. He witnessed the widespread use of paper money, a concept largely unknown and perhaps even unbelievable in Europe at the time, which facilitated a complex and vast economy, allowing for commerce on an unprecedented scale, eliminating the need for heavy coinage. He observed the highly organized imperial postal system, with its network of relay stations and thousands of swift horsemen, allowing for rapid communication across the expansive empire, a system far superior to anything in the West. The sheer scale of the city, its chaotic markets filled with goods from every corner of Asia, its grand palaces adorned with exquisite artistry and surrounded by bountiful gardens, and its diverse population of Mongols, Chinese, and various other ethnicities, left an indelible impression on him, challenging all his preconceived notions of the world. He was living in a civilization that was, in many ways, technologically and culturally far more advanced and complex than anything he had known in Venice, or indeed anywhere in Europe, a true glimpse into a future that Europe would not reach for centuries. Marco Polo's extensive service to Kublai Khan was by no means confined to the imperial capital. Indeed, it was his numerous and far-reaching travels throughout the incredibly diverse territories of Cathay, as China was then known, that provided the richest and most astonishing material for his later world-changing accounts. For 17 remarkable years, Marco served as a trusted envoy and administrator for the great Khan, undertaking countless missions that carried him to the furthest reaches of the Yuan dynasty's sprawling dominion. These journeys were unparalleled opportunities for a European to observe, meticulously document, and deeply immerse himself in a civilization of astonishing scale, profound sophistication, and technological advancement, a world utterly unlike his own, filled with wonders and innovations. His various missions led him to some of the most magnificent and populated cities in the world, urban centres that dwarfed anything known or even imagined in medieval Europe. He spent considerable time, for instance, in Kinsay, modern-day Hangzhou, describing it with genuine awe as the finest and noblest city in the world and the most splendid. His accounts paint a vivid and detailed picture of its immense size, its intricate network of beautiful canals and elegant bridges that crisscross the city, its crowded markets laden with an array of exotic goods from across Asia, and its truly massive population, which was estimated to be in the millions, a figure that would have seemed fantastical to Europeans. He marvelled at its organised structure, its public baths, its efficient firefighting services, and its sophisticated municipal administration, noting how the city was run with a level of order and public service far beyond what was common in European cities. He also visited other significant urban centres, from the ancient grandeur of cities in northern China, like Jiqing, today Nanjing, to the vibrant commercial hubs of the south, observing their unique characteristics, their local industries, and the distinct rhythms of life within their walls. Each city a microcosm of the empire's diversity. Through these extensive and privileged travels, Marco Polo became an exceptionally keen observer of Chinese life and its remarkably advanced technologies. He meticulously documented the sophisticated urban planning evident in cities like Canbalik and Kinsi, with their grid-like layouts and wide avenues designed for efficient movement and grand imperial processions. He was deeply impressed by the intricate network of canals, most notably the Grand Canal, a colossal engineering feat that facilitated internal trade and communication across great distances, linking the north and south of the empire, allowing for the transport of grain and goods with remarkable efficiency. He was particularly fascinated by innovations that were either entirely unknown or only rudimentary in Europe at the time. He noted the burning of what he called black stones for fuel, a common practice in China, but a complete novelty to Europeans, who primarily relied on wood for heating and industry. Using coal would not become commonplace in Europe for centuries. He also described the exquisite craftsmanship of Chinese porcelain, the efficiency and speed of their imperial postal system, and the sheer scale of their agricultural production, particularly rice, which sustained a population far larger than any in Europe. Marco's journeys also brought him into intimate contact with a range of diverse cultures and customs within the sprawling Mongol Empire, revealing a world far richer and more varied than any European had conceived. He encountered the various ethnic groups of China, including the Han, as well as the different nomadic tribes of the steppes and the settled communities living under Mongol rule across the colossal Asian continent. He observed their unique forms of worship, from the ancient practices of Buddhism and Taoism to the newer influences of Islam and various indigenous beliefs, noting the remarkable religious tolerance practiced by the Mongols, which allowed these diverse faiths to coexist relatively peacefully within the empire. He documented their distinct social structures, their vibrant festivals, their varied and often elaborate cuisines, and their unique artistic expressions, from intricate silk weaving to grand architectural styles. His privileged role as an envoy and reporter for the Khan meant he was encouraged to absorb and relay these details, providing Kublai with invaluable intelligence on the vast and diverse empire he governed. This deep and prolonged immersion, far from being mere fleeting glimpses, provided Marco with an unparalleled, first-hand education in the astonishing diversity of humanity and the profound interconnectedness of the medieval world, shaping his understanding of global commerce, culture, and governance in a way no European before him had ever experienced, and indeed few would for centuries to come, making his eventual written account a truly revolutionary document. After 17 years of remarkable service, extensive travel, and deep immersion within the Mongol Empire, the Polo family, Marco, his father Niccolo, and his uncle Maffeo, began to feel an increasingly powerful and undeniable pull of home. The passage of nearly 2 decades in a foreign land, however fascinating, had fostered a deep longing for Venice, for their families, for the familiar rhythm of their lives on the canals, and for the comforts of their native land. However, Kublai Khan, who had come to deeply value Marco's intelligence, loyalty, and unique skills as an envoy and administrator, was exceedingly reluctant to let them go. He had grown accustomed to Marco's insightful reports, his ability to provide valuable perspectives on the diverse regions of his empire, and his general usefulness in the court. For a considerable time, he steadfastly refused their repeated requests to depart, finding them too indispensable to his court and administration, a testament to the high regard in which he held them. Their eventual departure in 1292 was finally made possible by a very specific and high-stakes diplomatic mission that only the Polos, with their unparalleled experience in both overland and potentially maritime travel, could undertake. A Mongol princess Kukoshin, a young woman of noble birth, was to be sent to Persia to become the consort of Arghun Khan, the Ilkhan of Persia, a journey of great importance and considerable peril given the vast distances and political complexities involved. This provided the Polos with the perfect and undeniable opportunity to finally begin their long-awaited return journey. They departed from the Chinese port of Zaitun, a major maritime hub for the Yuan dynasty, with a large and impressive fleet of 14 ships, laden with gifts and treasures from the Khan, and also with the precious human cargo of the princess and her extensive entourage, totaling over 600 people. The spectacle of their departure, with the grand ships setting sail from the vibrant harbour, must have been a memorable sight, marking the beginning of their final, epic passage back towards the west. The return journey was predominantly by sea, a challenging and often dangerous maritime expedition across the extensive and unpredictable Indian Ocean, a route less travelled by Europeans at the time. Their complex route took them through the intricate waters of Southeast Asia, making significant stops in places like Sumatra, where Marco observed the local customs, the unique flora and fauna, and the bustling trade of the island. They then navigated the dangerous currents and unpredictable monsoon winds of the Indian Ocean, passing by the coasts of India and Sri Lanka, before finally reaching the Persian Gulf. This extensive sea voyage, though different in its challenges from their overland journey, presented its own set of formidable obstacles, including violent storms that could capsize ships, the sheer size of the open ocean that demanded precise navigation without modern instruments, and the constant threat of piracy from various maritime groups. The scale of the maritime trade networks they witnessed, connecting distant lands by sea, would have been as impressive and eye-opening as the overland Silk Road, further expanding Marco's understanding of global commerce. Upon reaching Persia, after a journey that had already lasted over 18 months at sea, they received somber news. Arghun Khan, the intended groom for the princess, had tragically died. The princess was subsequently married to Arghun's son, Ghazan, ensuring the diplomatic mission was still fulfilled. The Polos remained in Persia for a time, fulfilling their escort duties and perhaps engaging in some final mercantile activities, before finally continuing their journey overland. From Persia they made their way westward, retracing some of the familiar territories they had traversed years earlier, eventually reaching the ancient and storied city of Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, a final grand waypoint before Europe. From this last great crossroads of empires, a city that itself was a blend of east and west, they finally sailed back to Venice, arriving in 1295. Their homecoming, after 24 years of absence, was remarkably quiet, perhaps even anticlimactic, for a family that had journeyed so far and seen so much. They had left as a father and uncle with a curious teenager. They returned as seasoned travellers with incredible wealth, but also with stories so extraordinary, so far beyond the common experience of countrymen, that many would struggle to believe them. The long voyage home had concluded, bringing them back to the familiar canals, but the adventures of Marco Polo and their lasting impact were far from over. The return of the Polo family to Venice after an absence that had spanned nearly a quarter of a century was not met with immediate fanfare or widespread recognition. Indeed, their prolonged absence had rendered them almost forgotten figures in their hometown, their faces perhaps unfamiliar to a new generation, their incredible tales yet untold to a wider public. Venice, a city perpetually engaged in fierce mercantile rivalries and territorial disputes, was at this time embroiled in a bitter naval war with its powerful maritime competitor Genoa, a conflict that consumed the attention and resources of its citizens. It was during this very conflict, in 1298, that Marco Polo found himself in an unexpected and ultimately pivotal situation. He was captured during a naval engagement, likely the Battle of Curzala, a major clash between the Venetian and Genoese fleets, and subsequently imprisoned in Genoa. This period of incarceration, though a severe setback for his personal freedom and a harsh interruption to his return to normal life, proved to be the unlikely and profoundly fortuitous catalyst for the creation of his enduring legacy, a book that would change the world's understanding of geography and culture. While confined to a Genoese prison alongside other captives of war, Marco Polo found himself sharing a cell with a man named Rustichello da Pisa, a professional romance writer who was also a prisoner of war. This seemingly chance encounter, which proved incredibly valuable for historians, brought together two individuals with remarkably complementary talents and circumstances. A man with an unparalleled wealth of extraordinary first-hand experiences from the distant and largely unknown East, and a man highly skilled in the art of storytelling, literary composition, and the popular narrative forms of the medieval era. Marco, eager to preserve and share his incredible adventures and meticulous observations from the distant East, and perhaps to pass the time during his captivity, began to dictate his tales to Rustichello. He recounted in vivid and often astonishing detail the wonders he had seen, the vastness and intricate administration of Kublai Khan's sprawling empire, the unimaginable opulence and cultural richness of his court, the advanced technologies and societal structures of China, the diverse peoples and cultures of Asia, and the adventurous, challenging journeys he had undertaken across deserts, mountains, and seas. Rustichello, with his keen writer's instinct and his understanding of what would captivate a medieval audience, immediately recognized the unique and compelling nature of Marco's narratives. He meticulously compiled these oral accounts, transforming them into a cohesive and engaging book. The translated title of this monumental work was Divisament du Monde, Description of the World. This reflected its comprehensive scope and its ambition to document the known world, but it quickly became more widely known by its popular title Il Milione, which means the million. This popular title was possibly a playful or skeptical reference to Marco's nickname, Marco Milione, which he may have earned either due to his tales of millions of riches and huge populations, or more likely, because his stories seemed so incredible, so far beyond the common experience of Europeans, that they were dismissed by some as a million exaggerations or fabrications. The book was primarily written in Old French, a common and widely understood literary language of the time, ensuring that it could be read and disseminated across a broad European audience, from aristocratic courts and scholarly cloisters to the merchant houses that longed for new trade opportunities. It was a comprehensive and groundbreaking account of the geography, the diverse peoples, the intricate customs, and the complex economies of the entire Eastern world, as observed and documented by Marco himself, offering a window into a world previously veiled in mystery. The initial reception of Il Milione in Europe was, as might be expected, a complex mixture of profound wonder, genuine fascination, and deep, ingrained skepticism. For many Europeans, whose worldview was largely confined to their own continent and the Near East, the descriptions of cities larger and more organized than any in the West, of paper money being used as currency on a national scale, of coal being burned for fuel, and of large, sophisticated empires in the distant East, seemed too fantastical, too grand, and too alien to be entirely true. Marco Polo himself was sometimes mocked and ridiculed as Marco Milione for his seemingly exaggerated claims, with some dismissing his book as pure fiction or the product of an overactive imagination. Yet, despite the widespread disbelief and the occasional ridicule, the book quickly gained immense popularity and began to circulate widely. Numerous copies were made by hand, often beautifully illuminated, and it was translated into various European languages, including Latin, Italian, German, and even Catalan. The book was read by a diverse audience of merchants eager for new trade routes, scholars seeking to expand their knowledge of geography, cartographers eager for new data, and aspiring explorers dreaming of distant lands. It became, despite its contested veracity, a crucial and unparalleled source of information about Asia, profoundly shaping European understanding of the world beyond its familiar borders, even if not all its details were immediately accepted as fact. The book provided an irresistible glimpse into a world far richer, more complex, and more technologically advanced than previously imagined, sparking an unquenchable curiosity and fueling the nascent spirit of exploration that would define later centuries and ultimately lead to the Age of Discovery. Its very existence challenged the limited medieval European worldview, hinting at a globe far larger and more diverse than previously conceived. The publication of the Travels of Marco Polo, or Il Milione, following his release after 1 year in captivity, had a profound, multifaceted, and lasting influence on European thought, cartography, and the burgeoning age of exploration, far beyond what its initial skeptical reception might have suggested. While it was indeed initially met with a complex mix of wonder, fascination, and outright disbelief, the sheer volume of meticulous detail and the vividness of his descriptions gradually began to expand the European worldview beyond its narrow, traditional, and often insular Eurocentric confines. For centuries after its appearance, his book served as the primary, and often only, source of reliable information about the distant Far East, providing Europeans with an unprecedented glimpse into civilizations far more advanced, populous, and culturally rich than anything known or experienced in the West. His accounts fueled the imaginations of not only merchants seeking new trade routes and valuable commodities, but also monarchs dreaming of new empires and sources of power, inspiring a powerful desire to reach these fabled lands directly. Perhaps the most significant and transformative impact of Marco Polo's work was its direct influence on the pivotal age of exploration that would commence more than a century after his death. His book was widely read, studied, and annotated by navigators, cartographers, and explorers in the centuries that followed, becoming an absolutely crucial reference text for those daring to venture into the unknown. Christopher Columbus, for instance, famously owned a heavily annotated copy of Il Milione, which he studied diligently, making notes in the margins, particularly on the descriptions of Cathay and Cipangu. Marco Polo's vivid and compelling descriptions of these lands, with their untold riches and vast populations, profoundly fueled the conviction of Columbus that he could reach these eastern lands by sailing west across the Atlantic Ocean, a bold and unprecedented proposition that defied the conventional wisdom of the time. While Columbus never actually reached Asia, his pivotal voyages that ultimately led to the discovery of the Americas were directly inspired and guided by the vision of the East, so compellingly painted by Marco Polo, demonstrating the power of a written account to spark world-changing endeavours. The book thus became a conceptual map, even more than a literal one, for future explorers, a testament to the power of narrative to drive human action. Marco Polo's accounts also played an undeniably vital role in the development and refinement of European cartography. Before his travels, maps of Asia were largely based on conjecture, incomplete classical texts, and often even Eastern mythology, bearing little resemblance to geographical reality. His detailed descriptions of cities, major rivers, towering mountain ranges, and extensive coastlines, though sometimes imprecise or lacking precise coordinates, provided invaluable new geographical data that had previously been unavailable to Western mapmakers. Cartographers like Fra Mauro, in his famous 15th century world map, meticulously incorporated Polo's toponyms the names of places, and his geographical observations, creating a more accurate, comprehensive, and detailed understanding of the Asian continent than had ever existed in Europe. This profound expansion of geographical knowledge was absolutely fundamental to the subsequent voyages of discovery that would ultimately reshape the global map, leading to a more accurate understanding of the world's true dimensions and the distribution of its land masses. The unique blend of factual observation and what some contemporaries perceived as embellishment or exaggeration in his accounts contributed significantly to the book's power and enduring appeal, ensuring their longevity and widespread impact. While some contemporaries and later scholars debated and even doubted the veracity of his more incredible tales, the very scale and novelty of his descriptions made the East seem both real and wondrous, a place of tangible riches, advanced civilizations, and exotic marvels. His narrative style, even though mediated and perhaps structured by Rustichello, allowed readers to immerse themselves in a world of thriving markets, grand imperial palaces, and exotic customs, making the distant East feel palpable and intensely desirable. This powerful narrative quality ensured the book's survival, its widespread distribution, and its continued influence across centuries, even if its accuracy was sometimes questioned or debated. The book became a touchstone for curiosity, a challenge to the known, and an invitation to explore. Marco Polo thus became, and remains to this day, the quintessential explorer, a profound cultural bridge between the civilizations of East and West. He was not primarily a conqueror or a missionary, but a merchant who observed, reported, and, through his words, opened an important window onto a world previously shrouded in mystery and misconception. His legacy is not just the wealth he accumulated or the places he visited, but the profound intellectual and imaginative shift he initiated in the European worldview. He demonstrated, through his own lived experience, the interconnectedness of the world, the vastness and diversity of human civilization, and the boundless potential for cultural exchange and mutual learning. His extraordinary journey, and the book that chronicled it, became a timeless testament to human curiosity, resilience, and the enduring allure of the unknown, inspiring generations to look beyond their own immediate horizons and to dream of what lay beyond the familiar, ultimately contributing to a more globalized understanding of the planet. Marco Polo's extraordinary journey and the book that chronicled it became a timeless testament to human curiosity. Yet for Marco himself, the years following his return to Venice were marked by a quiet and radical adjustment to a world that had moved on without him. He was a hero of great repute, yet many who saw him for the first time were skeptical. The man who had left Venice as a boy returned as a middle-aged man, with a foreign accent and stories that seemed too fantastic to be true. To silence the doubters, he and his family held a grand banquet. There they revealed the truth of their substantial fortune by slitting open the seams of their old, patched travelling clothes, from which spilled a breathtaking cascade of emeralds, rubies, and other precious stones. This single act silenced the whispers and established the family's wealth and credibility beyond all doubt. Though likely a legend, embellished or imagined at a later date, this story perfectly captured the Venetian public's initial disbelief and the miraculous scale of the family's wealth. With his reputation and fortune secured, Marco settled into a life far removed from the dangers of the Silk Road. He took his place as a successful and respected merchant, running the family's thriving business. He was no longer a traveller, but a pillar of the Venetian commercial elite, navigating the intricate currents of trade and finance from the stability of his hometown. His days were spent managing assets, settling business disputes, and attending to the affairs of a prosperous family, a stark contrast to the years he'd spent as a high-ranking official at the Mongol court. This period of stability was also marked by a profound shift in his personal life. Sometime around 1300, he married a woman named Donata Badoer. She was from a respected Venetian family, and together they established a household filled with the kind of permanence and love that had been absent from Marco's formative years. They had 3 daughters, Fantina, Bellella, and Moretta, and it was in this role, as a devoted husband and father, that Marco found a new kind of fulfillment. He was no longer the lone explorer seeking the edges of the known world, but a man deeply rooted in the heart of Venice, a family man who valued the peace and security of home. As the years passed, his health began to fail. In 1323, at the age of 69, he became bedridden due to illness. Knowing his time was short, he began preparing his last will and testament, a meticulous document that revealed his continued dedication to his family. In it he freed a Tatar slave named Peter, a loyal companion who had likely journeyed with him from Asia, and distributed his substantial wealth among his wife, daughters, and various charitable causes. It was during these final days that a moment of drama is said to have occurred, one that perfectly encapsulates his entire life. On his deathbed, his family and a local priest implored him to confess that his book, Il Milione, was filled with fabrications, to retract his most unbelievable stories so that he could die with a clear conscience and receive absolution for his sins. Marco Polo, however, refused to relent. On his deathbed, he is famously said to have declared, "I have not told half of what I saw, for I knew I would not be believed." Marco Polo died in his Venetian home in January 1324, a man whose incredible journeys had ended decades before, but whose final words cemented his legacy not just as a merchant, but as a man who lived a life so grand that even he knew its full truth was too extraordinary to be accepted. The age of Marco Polo's incredible journey has long since faded into the quiet stillness of history. The great trade routes, once alive with the caravan bells of merchants and the distant sounds of foreign tongues, now rest silently, their secrets held beneath the shifting sands of time. The vibrant markets of medieval Venice, the grand palaces of Khan Balik shimmering under imperial banners, all have softened into a rich hum of memory, carried on the breeze of ages like the faint scent of spices. Marco's story, once a source of disbelief and wonder, no longer echoes with the urgency of a new discovery. Instead, it has settled into the deep, encompassing embrace of the historical record. It is a testament to the profound ambitions that drove men to cross continents and the wonders that filled their imaginations. His life, and the book that came from it, remain a timeless reminder that while the world may shrink, the human spirit of curiosity endures, an invitation to look beyond our own horizons and to dream of what lies beyond. Now the footsteps begin to fade, and the names of cities grow distant, softened by time and memory. The long arc of Marco Polo's journey has stretched across mountains and empires, but as we turn now toward quieter paths, it is not the motion we follow, but the stillness that follows after. There was a time, long ago, when Marco Polo stood on the worn stones of a harbour in the city of Acre, watching the rigging of ships sway against the light of a rising sun. He was young, not yet hardened by the desert winds, nor tempered by mountain snow, but already the weight of distance had settled into the folds of his robe. The road ahead stretched not as a line, but as a horizon without edge, and it would carry him through cities that glittered in the dark like embers in ash, and through valleys where the only sound was the hush of silk brushing against saddlebags. He would walk beneath the painted domes of Tabriz and past the walled gardens of Hormuz, where traders poured scented oils into clay jars and weighed lapis by moonlight, where water moved slowly through carved stone channels and the scent of cardamom clung to the air like memory. The names alone were enough to fill a life: Samarkand, Balkh, Kashgar, Dunhuang, each one a door that opened not to a place but to an arrangement of shadows, of sounds, of footsteps on packed earth and conversations heard half through translation, half through gesture. Marco Polo saw the world not in halves, east and west, but in textures. The rough grain of woolen tents outside Carmen, the smooth polish of jade in Yuan, the cracked lacquer of scroll boxes, unrolled by candlelight in a smoky chamber, where no one spoke above a whisper. He learned to read people as he read road signs, through tone, through posture, through silence. In the Mongol court he bowed low. He bowed because it was the right shape for that space. Because in the presence of Kublai Khan, the world tilted slightly, like a bowl of water left too long on a cart track. And always there were the animals. Camels that groaned under the weight of musk and gold thread, their breath rising in steam in the mountain air. Horses that glittered with sweat on the high plateaus. Dogs that trotted behind caravans for days, their eyes bright and their steps steady. Hawks on the fists of nobles. Falcons wrapped in hoods of embroidered leather, trained to dive for quarry with a cry that echoed into cloud. Elephants in the southern provinces, their tusks painted and their ears like curtains, moving with a gentleness that belied the sound of their steps. Marco Polo remembered the elephants. Years later, when the dust of home settled into his lungs and the bells of Venetian trade houses rang in his ears, he would close his eyes and think not of gold nor silks, but of elephants walking across a river, their shadows wide and slow moving across the sand. Elephants in the southern provinces, their tusks painted and their ears like curtains, moving with a gentleness that belied the sound of their steps. Marco Polo remembered the elephant. Years later, when the dust of home settled into his lungs and the bells of Venetian trade houses rang in his ears, he would close his eyes and think not of gold nor silks, but of elephants walking across a river, their shadows wide and slow moving across the sand. There were cities that unfolded like riddles, each answer a new question. In Chang'an, he traced the geometry of tiled rooftops with his eyes, each one curved slightly toward the heavens, as though the buildings themselves aspired to flight. In Chang'an, he watched paper money exchange hands, marveled at its weightlessness, its strangeness, how value could be held in something so thin, so silent. In Kanbalik, later to be called Dadu, later still Beijing, he stood in the imperial court and spoke words carried from the far side of the world. And the men who listened did not laugh. They asked questions. They leaned forward. They wanted to know about Rome, about papal politics, about the Latin alphabet. They asked if the wine in Europe was as fine as Persian vintages, and what music sounded like when sung in the cathedrals of the West. Kublai Khan, whose eyes missed nothing, would tap the arm of his throne with 2 fingers when intrigued. Marco learned to watch those fingers. The world was not flat. He had seen its rise and fall, its contours traced in the shape of mountain passes and the fall of rain along terraced hillsides. He had crossed the Pamirs, where the sky turned brittle and blue, and the stars came down so close they seemed to rest just above his head. He had walked through Gobi sands that sang beneath his boots, a sound like breath or wind or something older than either. He had crossed rivers frozen solid, the ice groaning beneath cartwheels, and rivers so wide it took 3 days to reach the opposite bank. And when he looked into the water, he did not see his reflection, but the movement of it shifting, transient, never still. And yet, even in motion, there was repetition, the rhythm of hoofbeats, the pull of leather straps, the creak of wooden wheels over stone. The same questions asked in different tongues. Where are you from? Where are you going? What are you carrying? Marco Polo had many answers, all true, all partial. He was a Venetian merchant, a foreign envoy, a Christian traveller, a servant of the Khan, a student of geography, a witness, a mirror. There were nights when he slept under canopies of silk, and nights when he curled beside a fire pit with only his cloak for warmth. He carried letters in hidden compartments, and remembered conversations by the shapes of the rooms they happened in. He ate dried apricots in winter, and fresh dates in summer, and forgot for years at a time what bread from Venice tasted like. Sometimes he dreamed of home. He dreamed of the salt smell of the lagoon, of the sound of bells across water, of the way light touched the stone of the Rialto Bridge at sunrise. But the longer he travelled, the harder it became to picture his mother's face, or the exact pitch of his cousin's voice. They became silhouettes, outlines, defined more by the absence of detail than its presence. Instead, his mind filled with the crisp blue of Central Asian sky, the rhythmic slap of looms in Hangzhou, the slow turn of calligraphic brushes in silent rooms. Years would pass. The seasons spun through their cycle: bloom, scorch, harvest, cold. He stopped counting distances. He counted coins, counted horses, counted crates and bolts and barrels, but not days. Time softened, faces blurred. He kept track of things by terrain. That was the year of the mountain storms. That was the year of the poisoned well. That was the year the ambassador's caravan was ambushed, and he had to take command. That was the year he crossed into the Valley of Salt, and saw the flaming cliffs of Turpan for the first time. That was the year of the snow leopards. Even in the quietest places, the road remained. In temples where monks knelt in morning light, in taverns where men laughed over wine, in markets where children pointed at foreign clothes, the road stretched on. It was not made of stone or dust, but of motion itself, of memory and intention, of the idea that one might leave a place and become something else. Marco Polo was not simply travelling through Asia. He was becoming the thread that tied one world to another. He was the space between pages, the ink that made maps meaningful, the breath between languages. It was not made of stone or dust, but of motion itself, of memory and intention, of the idea that one might leave a place and become something else. Marco Polo was not simply travelling through Asia. He was becoming the thread that tied one world to another. He was the space between pages, the ink that made maps meaningful, the breath between languages. And so he continued, moving through the world and letting the world move through him. And with every step eastward, he carried with him the weight of where he had come from, and the faint shifting outline of all that lay ahead. There are paths that do not end so much as dissolve, their lines faded by wind, their meaning drawn out slowly by repetition. A man walks beside his own shadow, and the sound of footfall becomes indistinct from the sound of There are no more milestones now, only rhythm of beasts breathing, of wheels turning, of water finding its lowest point. The road becomes an act of continuation, and in this act there is something almost ceremonial. The arrangement of bundles, the tightening of straps, the shared glance between traveller and animal, before another morning begins. The dust clings to everything. It gathers in the folds of cloth, in the creases of palms, in the edges of memory. It turns black silks into brown ones, turns bright coins dull, turns the lines of the face inward. A once new saddle creaks in a way that is familiar now, as though it has always done so. Leather softens, wood warps slightly. The shape of a man changes, not in posture, but in expectation. He no longer wonders what lies beyond the next ridge. He only moves toward it. The sky is too large to name. It shifts from one colour to another, pale at dawn, raw at midday, bruised and faded by evening. It is not blue or grey or gold. It is all of them at once, layered and washed, like pigment on damp plaster. At night, the stars return, not as points, but as pressure, as a kind of quiet weight pressing down from above. The cold arrives gently and then stays, settling in the joints, rising in the breath, sharpening the outlines of tents. There is always the scent of something: burned rice, wet wool, saddle oil, melted snow on stone. A kind of sweetness that comes from dried figs warming in a pouch, a kind of sourness from the skins of pickled fruit, too long unopened. And beyond that, wind, the dry metallic scent of high passes and deep interior places. In lower lands there are fires. Some are near, ringed with travellers, and the low hum of speech. Some are far, flickering on hillsides, unattended, left to burn down on their own. Smoke moves like memory does, not in a line, but in eddies, circling back before it disappears. Somewhere, drums are carried on the wind, not loud but steady. Someone is marking a celebration or calling a gathering. The sound fades, returns, fades again. It becomes difficult to say how long it's been since anyone spoke. The body begins to store movement, like memory. How many steps to the water? How long to boil the tea? How many knots to tie for the morning load? Voices are saved for necessity. Most things are said with gesture. Sometimes a bird passes overhead. Sometimes there is only sky. Sometimes there are tracks in the earth that were not there the night before. The road forks without warning and rejoins again later, like a thought half interrupted and resumed. No one asks why. There is no reason to ask. 1,000 others have walked here before, and 1,000 more will follow. This path does not require knowing. It requires only motion. In the quiet, things begin to layer. One memory rests beneath another. A room filled with scrolls overlays a mountainside. The scent of horse sweat mixes with the sound of water on carved stone. A name spoken long ago appears without meaning. A face half remembered floats in the mind and then dissolves. At some point it becomes difficult to say whether a conversation happened yesterday or years ago, or if it happened at all. Language becomes texture, not meaning. A phrase once repeated in a city far from here now returns in fragments, worn down to its rhythm. There is an old robe at the bottom of a pack. It smells of spice and smoke, and something that might be ink. It has not been worn in many months, but it is kept still, not for need, but for remembrance. It is not the only thing kept. There is a coin with a hole through the center, tied on a cord, a strip of dyed cloth, once part of a flag, a single page from a book, the writing half faded. These objects are not useful now. They are anchors. They remind the hand what it once held. The moon is higher than it should be. The hills are unfamiliar, though the shape of them is not. Some trees are the same, and some are not. The stars shift slightly. The rivers narrow. The sky leans closer. Every so often, a voice is heard in a dialect that feels like a dream, half remembered, close enough to understand, but spoken at a distance. There is no reason to respond. Time slows further. The days do not pass so much as settle. There is no beginning and no end. The fire is lit, then it is dark. The road climbs, then it descends. A village appears on the horizon and is gone by the next morning. Tents rise and fall like breath. Everything moves. Nothing arrives. There are fewer letters now. The page remains blank. The ink dries in the bottle. There is nothing urgent to say, and no one to say it to. What needs to be remembered is already remembered. The rest will fall away. And still, onward, through plains that ripple like water, through forests that bend at the tops and stay still at the roots, through market squares where the colours seem too bright, the sound too sharp, the motion too quick, then away again, into silence, into a place where even thought is too loud, and the only thing left is the weight of the next step. The world begins to quiet. The names are fewer, the distances grow softer at the edges. The map is no longer consulted. The map is inside now, drawn not in ink, but in sensation, in pressure on the soles, in strain in the thighs, in the angle of sun on cloth. The road continues, though the difference between the road and the self has grown thin. The traveller continues, though what he is travelling toward no longer has a name. The road continues, though the difference between the road and the self has grown thin. The traveller continues, though what he is travelling toward no longer has a name. What rises now is not intention, not even repetition, but a slow rolling of indistinct intervals, where gesture is only the faint echo of older gestures, where the lifting of a hand might once have meant greeting or warning, or request, but now means only that the hand has lifted. The world moves beneath itself in layers too slow to track, and the line between land and sky softens into a single reflective span that offers no distance and no edge, only variations in tone, so slight they register more in breath than in sight. The cloth along the shoulders loosens and pulls. The sun exists somewhere above, but does not register as warmth, only as the long absence of shadow. Fabric knots against fabric, and the folds settle, and the fold beneath the fold becomes heavier than the shape of the thing itself. Whatever path once cut through the hills has flattened beneath months of wind and light, and now it holds no ridge, no groove, no indication of intention. It is only direction by default, selected not because of what it leads toward, but because it remains visible when the others have dissolved. Even the air seems to suspend its substance, not quite wind, not quite still, not marked by temperature or taste, only present in the way hair moves, in the way the skin along the jaw lifts and falls. A thread once tied at the wrist has come loose and caught again around a sleeve, and there is no memory of when it broke, or what it marked, or whether it was ever tied at all. The motion of the animals can still be felt underfoot, not because they are there, but because the shape of their rhythm has never fully left the body's pacing. A leather strap adjusts slightly against the weight of a shoulder, and for a moment the pressure brings back the outline of a tent seen weeks before, or maybe longer, with canvas worn thin at the points where it rubbed against its own frame. That tent is not here. That day is not here. But the pressure remains, and the shape of that memory walks just behind the ribcage, folding and unfolding like cloth hung too long in wind. At some point, the pattern of stopping and starting became indistinct. Whether this is motion or rest cannot be clearly told, not by the angle of the sun, nor the stretch of the back, nor the shift in how the ground resists. Whether the boots have worn thin, or the feet beneath them have grown into new shapes, neither matters. Stones pass underfoot without registering. The sense of contact has become tonal, not tactile, like hearing a drum through a wall, and understanding only that something continues. There are sounds in the distance, but the distance has no contour, no rise to it, no narrowing as it recedes. A bell, or a bird, or water pressed between stones. It could be days away, or it could be inside the ear itself. No attempt is made to locate it. To locate anything would imply the presence of location, and this has long since become secondary to the passage itself. Even the concept of passage has grown too definite. It is not that something is being crossed, it is only that something has not yet stopped. A low humming may be breath, or memory of breath, or the sound of a voice remembered in the space behind thought. A name might arise without context, syllables familiar and distant, but it dissolves before it forms, not from forgetfulness, but from lack of consequence. What is retained now does not have names. What remains is the outline of motion, the angle of descent along a dry ravine, the particular way one stone always seems to shift a little later than the others beneath the heel. The eyes close, then open. The difference is negligible. Light enters, that is all. The world is still in front, still below, still present. Whether it is the same world as it was the moment before is not questioned, because the distinction holds no use. There is only terrain, and the body within it, and neither is fixed. Nothing marks the moment when the breath shallows or the joints stiffen. There is no tally, no measure. No one is counting the hours between steps, or the steps between pauses. The pause itself may have already lasted, may be ongoing even now. There are no more containers for thought, no stones remain.